If you enjoyed today's video, please consider subscribing to the channel. When you do, make sure you hit the notification bell. That means that you will be informed of when a new video has been released. If you would like to take that support one step further, you can do that via Patreon, which is an optional monthly service. You can donate money towards the channel, or you can go over to Ko-fi.com, and for the price of a coffee you can help donate towards the channel as well. Links for all of those will be in the description of the video, and without further ado, enjoy the video. Hello and welcome to Football Coaching 101, hosted by James and Adam from the Non-League Nosh, presented by James Bloomfield, football coach in non-league football. The series in which we will be introducing you to coaches from the professional game, gaining their insight and knowledge into the beautiful game that we love. So sit back and enjoy.
Daryl, thanks ever so much for coming on. I'm welcoming a guest here today who's had experience through academy football in England with Chelsea and Tottenham, assisted Arsenal and England legend Tony Adams, and been sporting director of a national FA. So thanks ever so much for joining me, Daryl.
Yeah, thanks very much, and thanks for inviting me on.
No problem at all. I really look forward to sort of delving into the mind of someone that's done as much as you have done already.
Thank you, yeah.
Do you mind if we start right from the very beginning? So my first question for you was, how young did you start coaching? Because I believe it was fairly early. And what was it about coaching that sort of drew you into wanting to do it?
Well, I played like everyone else did, really, when, sort of 6, 7 years old, and loved the game. And I think my first sort of, was about 15, 16, when I sort of thought to myself, I really wanted to be a coach, and it sort of hit me that early. And, instead of chasing the dreams of trying to be, at the time, sort of a semi-pro footballer, if you like, that was the sort of dream for me at the time. It was a case of I wanted to be a coach. So whilst I was playing, I got involved with a local grassroots team called Pembury, down in Kent, and just helped out with these sort of under 9s and under 10s, and very quickly sort of got onto my level 2 at about 17. I just got the bug for it and the love for it, and it just felt right at the time. Even though this is at a time, I mean, look, I'm 37, so I don't think of myself as an old coach at all. I still think of myself as a young coach.
Definitely.
But the times were different then. You're talking 19 years ago, and it wasn't a career path for everybody at the time, which it is now.
Sure.
There wasn't too many 16-year-olds, trying to get into coaching. And, when I've done my level 2, for example, it's all changed now. If you do your level 2, probably the average age is probably around sort of late teens and 20s, and back then I was easily the youngest by probably 6, 7 years.
Really?
Yeah. And, it was just something that I always wanted to do. I felt my early days of coaching the grassroots, it was fantastic time for me learning the basics of communication. It was a wonderful time for me.
Brilliant. So it really did start. It's really nice to hear from somebody, to be honest, that's in a similar position to so many coaches out there, and actually myself included, who have not played professional football, has found their love for it early, and has managed to go on to do everything you have done already. So it's really nice to know that you started right from the very, I want to say the very bottom, because like you said, 8 or 9-year-olds in grassroots football, that really is getting stuck into the deep end when you're dealing with children. And like you said, the art of communication is so important. So how did it go? What was the pathway from there to working for Chelsea Football Club? That seems such a big and quite a predominant step.
Well, I think I was about 17, 18, and there was flyers going around the local area of Chelsea in the community back then. And I picked up a flyer, and as I do, and I still like it now, annoying. And, I picked up the phone to a guy called Alf Blanford, who was running the course at the time, about 15 minutes away. And I said, look, my name's Daryl. I'm 17. I want to be a football coach. Can I come along and pick up cones? And they were my words exactly.
Mhm.
And
Wow.
he just went straight away and he went, yes. I think, that doesn't really happen now, So I think he was quite surprised with my eagerness and my willingness to sort of come along for free and sort of do all the picking up cones, like I said.
Mhm.
And I went along for a week and I learned a hell of a lot. I met a wonderful guy called Alf, like I said,
Mhm.
who's one of he's been a fantastic scout for Chelsea for years. One of his boys was well, he's had loads, to be honest. He's had loads of boys come through Chelsea who have made it into the first team.
Wow.
And it was a case of sat there for 5 days. Then he asked me to join in. And it went from there. And then I got a call a couple of weeks later from him saying, Daryl, a coach is needed for a development centre in Kidbrooke in East London. Do you want to come along and give it a go, see how you get on? And it
Mhm.
went from and it went from there.
Excellent, excellent. That's really nice. Again, we do hear now of so many, especially in our area. I'm in East Anglia, sort of almost directly between Ipswich and Norwich, and they both run similar development programs that will also run alongside their academy. So, again, it's nice to know that coaches that maybe work in grassroots football down here can actually probably still follow a similar path to what you did, or maybe a different direction. So. But is that something you'd advise people to do then, to reach out and try and make those contacts like you did? And like you said, you established that contact. You offered to come and literally pick cones up. Is that something you advise people to do? People that maybe are trying to jump too quick, sort of too soon?
Yeah, listen, the generations have changed. Since I've returned back to England, I know we're skipping ahead quickly, but
Mm-hmm.
how many 17-year-olds do anything really for free anymore?
Definitely.
I think I think if you want to progress and you've got ambitions and you want to make something and that's really what you want to do, you've got to reach out to people and you've got to let them know that you're keen, you're here, and you want to learn.
Mm-hmm.
And you know what? 9 times out of 10, you won't get a response, but that one person might just go, you know what? I was that 17-year-old once,
Yeah.
and give you an opportunity. So,
Yeah.
absolutely.
And the position you're in now, you're probably now in a position where if somebody was that 17-year-old and they had offered to perhaps come and pick up your cones wherever you are next, there's a potential that would sort of that would interest you, and you would think, actually, I was in that position once, and although you can't do it for everybody, the keenness of somebody willing to do that would obviously interest you.
Yeah, absolutely. And I try to have them values today, and anyone who tries to reach out on social media, LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, whatever,
Mm-hmm.
I'm always doing my utmost to whatever questions they have and whatever assistance they need, then I'll always do my best to help out.
Brilliant, brilliant. So I'm going to now move on to the academy role at Chelsea. So you're there. That was a really substantial period of time. So it's listed as 5 years, 8 months, but there must be 6 seasons, I'm guessing.
Yeah, I mean, my first year actually, I think was Ken Bates,
Really.
and a lot of the training was done in Arlington, which is now QPR. But it was it was like at the end of the Heathrow runway, and when the Concorde took off, you had to stop coaching.
Really.
Yeah, because it was that loud. And but going back to the development centre, that was an incredible and probably some of the best period of coaching in my life, because number one, I was learning off fantastic coaches.
Mm-hmm.
In Michael Beale, for example, we started our coaching career together, who's
Wow.
now the first team coach at Glasgow Rangers.
At Rangers, yeah.
So we started out literally together, and and we had this passion and we used to sit there. We used to get 3 hours before training and just talk football, talk development, talk, just talk.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, that's always been the best way to learn, for me personally. And we had Damien Matthews, who ran the centre, former Chelsea player, who went on to be first team coach at Charlton. But the fantastic time for that is when Abramovich come in, and things really started to move on within the club. A lot of the young boys wanted to play for Chelsea. And that's just the way it was. And, the talent we had at that East London centre was incredible. So my first year, I had Rubens Loftus-Cheek as a 7-year-old. We had Tammy Abraham. He was there for a year or two. The list just goes on from that centre of top young players. And the diversity of London is massive as well. And you get boys like Rubens, who was just incredibly polite, smiling, and every training session just gave it as always looking to learn. And then you had Tammy, and you wouldn't believe it now, listening to him now, because what a polite young man he is now. But at the time, he's one of them that was, you turn your back for a second, he's hanging off the crossbar. And, and I remember he said to me once, and you can only smile, but obviously not let him know you're smiling. But he said to me once, "I'm not here to pick up cones, I'm here to score the goals."
Really?
And I could only...
At what age?
About 8, I think.
Wow.
And you could only smile, but obviously give him a bit of a telling off as well. But my point being is they these boys that have gone through the centres and went into the Chelsea Academy or other academies, because a lot of them ended up at other academies who have gone on to be pros, they all had this fantastic character about them. It's everything for me, is character, and to get right the way through the system and make it as a pro. But that I was doing the development centre for 6 years, and whilst I was doing the development centre, I was doing started off doing some academy work. So working with sort of various foundation age groups, really. We at the time, I mean, who did we have? Dominic Solanke. I think one team, I might get this wrong because it's a long time ago, but we had Dominic Solanke, Mason Mount. I mean, they're all in about 2 or 3 age groups. You have Rubens Loftus-Cheek, a bit older. You had Tammy Abraham, Declan Rice. It was just a fantastic time for me as a coach, and for the club in general. Everyone done a fantastic job.
Brilliant. A big question really from myself, when you speak about those names and talk about Declan Rice, Mason Mount, Ruben Loftus-Cheek, Tammy Abraham, they're all incredible footballers, and they're all obviously so different. Like you say, the difference between even Ruben and Tammy is incredible, and I can imagine Declan Rice again different. But was there anything in particular that between those players that they shared that you would say they all had a bit of this?
They all had a bit of fantastic character.
Yeah.
They had that no fear character as well. That confidence, that arrogance that you need. That and that arrogance is shown in different ways. It's not about showing you're arrogant. It was just maybe even like the way they played, or and it was great. And like I said, it's not an easy journey, is it, through the age groups? Definitely there's lots of ups, there's lots of downs, and to get right the way through is a huge task.
So you sort of have to have that character really to make it through. You're going to have a little bit of what they had. Yeah,
correct. Yeah.
Brilliant. So your role then, obviously with Chelsea over that 5 years, two questions into one really. Did your role change over that time? So you kind of already mentioned that the age groups you were working with changed. It wasn't 6 years at one age group, but also you mentioned it starting off at the old QPR training grounds. What did it develop into by the time you left?
Oh, yeah. Well, my role really, I never had a specific age group. I mean, I was, in my sort of late teens, early 20s.
Yeah,
And not only did Chelsea start attracting the best sort of foundation players, they started attracting some of the best coaches.
hmm,
Um,
wow,
so it's very hard for someone like myself, very inexperienced, very naive, to sort of like be given an age group at the time. And
of course,
I was in a fortunate position also then to shadow a lot of, have a lot of different experiences as different age groups. Um,
absolutely,
Brendan Rodgers was under 15 or 16 coach at the time.
wow,
Um, and he's one of the nicest guys sort of I met in the game, really. And
hmm,
even then he was just made you feel relaxed and part of it, and wanted to teach you and wanted to help you. And and obviously people like Michael Beale, etc. It was just a fantastic environment to
hmm.
learn in.
That probably
Um,
worked better for everybody, really. The fact that you was able to flick between, like you say, some incredible coaches to learn from, that probably worked better than allowing you just to say, off you go, there's your age group and crack on and we're happy with you. It probably worked better at the time then, looking back. Or I'm saying, was it better at the time that you was allowed and able to switch between these coaches? And to be with somebody like Brendan Rodgers and see them coach, and not just coach, but the way they behave around players and the communication you've mentioned already. I assume that's probably really really important actually now.
yeah, absolutely. And like I said, I was young, and I was naive as well, and inexperienced. And maybe if I was a bit more mature for a young 20-year-old, I could have, I could have had a position. But maybe I was seen, and no, let's face it, I was seen as maybe too inexperienced and too young
Hmm.
to have had that responsibility. But yeah, I mean, listen, over that time, it was just fantastic. And um, I learned so much. But it evolved from, it just evolved over months. I mean, it's ridiculous. They
Really?
obviously moved to Cobham,
Yeah.
um, and gradually bought different areas off different people who own the land, etc., and made it into the unbelievable training ground and facilities that it is now. Um, it was
Hmm.
just an incredible environment to see and to see grow. And the boys were, just incredibly lucky, to have had that opportunity, really.
Absolutely. And you mentioned, of course, when Abramovich came and took over. Um, was that towards the start of when you got there? And like you say, it was quite rapid things changing. And was it noticeable the amount, the vast number of kids wanting to be involved because of that change in the quite a direct reflection on the first team now signing incredible players and having unbelievable success.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, this is Abramovich came in somewhere through my first year, maybe a
Hmm.
few months even. Um, and obviously Mourinho was quickly appointed soon after. And
Yeah,
you sort of had that unbelievable game-changing Chelsea team, with
yeah,
players like Drogba, Michael
yeah.
Essien. It was just, it
List
was
goes
such
on.
yeah, it was such an incredible team, and something that the Premier League hadn't seen before. Um, and the style
Definitely.
of football and the style of training, it was incredible, and it was fashionable. And as a young 7 or 8 year old, if you have the choice between Chelsea and someone else, nine times out of 10 they chose Chelsea.
Because they're the stars,
Um,
they're the names. Yeah.
yeah, and and they've got the training ground, the facilities. And you know, if you're an 8 year
Mhm.
old deciding where to go, and you get shown around Chelsea training ground, you get to shake hands with John Terry. Sort of, your decision's made, isn't it?
Yeah, hook, line, and sinker at that minute.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. So I've had a look through there would have been three managers, first team managers throughout your time at Chelsea. Obviously Ranieri at the beginning, onto Mourinho and Avram Grant. Um, at the very end, that would have been the last year. Were any of them more active or more involved in what you were doing with the academy than the others, or was it fairly similar all the way through?
I think Jose had a great relationship with Neil Bath, the academy director. Not to say that the others didn't, I'm not saying that at all, but I'm just saying when he came in, he took a real interest in what was going on, and he worked closely with the academy director, so things rapidly filtered down, shall we say. You know, and there was handbooks of Mourinho, which he I think he called it his Bible. And that sort of filtered its way through the academy. So, yeah, I think Jose did take an interest. I don't think it worked out that way. That he obviously played many young players, but he did take an interest. And you know what, he's such a nice guy as well. He's one of them. I think it was on a Saturday morning. And you know, he's sort of rocked in at under 9, under 10 training and shook all the kids' hands. You know,
Really?
That's a side probably that people don't see and don't hear about.
Yeah, no, it's really, really nice to hear that. I think anybody would appreciate whatever level of the game you're in. If the first team manager is taking an interest in what's going on below that, it's really nice to hear that from a coaching perspective. I'm going to move on now. I'm going to move on a little bit swiftly to your next move. I'm not going to say on air why I believe this, but I believe you're a Tottenham Hotspur supporter, and you have the opportunity now to go into Tottenham Academy and spend a couple of years there. So, how was, from a personal point of view, first of all, how was that, and how did it come about?
Oh yeah, it was great. I basically, where I lived, I'd done some coaching quite regularly with Gary Stevens, who used to play for Spurs in England, and we had a good relationship. And he rang me one day and said that Tottenham were looking for like a foundation coach. Would I be interested? And the next thing I had was Chris Ramsey, who was sort of head of coaching or assistant academy manager. And he rang me and said, "Do you want to come in?" And then it went from there, really. And it was a no-brainer for me, just simply because, where are we talking? 2008 now. I wanted to lose the tag of being the young coach. I wanted to lose that tag. I wanted to go somewhere else and sort of stamp my philosophy on things and start somewhere afresh, really.
Yeah, so I think obviously having done 6 years, that they probably still saw you as that first coach that come in 6 years pre-hand, and obviously after 6 years, it must have been really nice to go in as yourself and be given that responsibility at a club you support as well. And the experiences I've read up about yourself there, playing against sides like AC Milan and Barcelona and Arsenal, that's real elite level football we're talking about in terms of obviously academy football. So the players there, are there any players now that we would recognise that you would have worked with at a foundation phase that are now coming through at that end, obviously being over 10 years ago now?
Yeah, I mean, Oliver Skipp.
Wow.
Oliver Skipp we had for 2 years. I had for 2 years because I was there for 2 years. Wonderful little player. Probably ability-wise, he was always at a high level for his age. But just and he still comes across it now. What a quiet individual he was, and he just quietly went around his job. You know, he was one of them that was so quiet, but at the end of the game got man of the match. You know, and he was
his business.
Yeah, but technically he was excellent, and like I said, he's just one of them that you never ever had to raise your voice or get his attention or anything like that, because he's staring at you, ready to learn. There's a lot of players coming through. You got a lot of players now playing for England youth teams. So you got Harvey White, who's in the under 19s. I would have thought. You got loads. You got Jamie Bowden. yeah, there's quite a few,
on.
but
Yeah,
I mean, what Tottenham was, a lot of people say it was Damien. I can't remember. Sorry, he said the Tottenham. You could always spot a Tottenham boy.
really.
You could always spot a boy that had come through the Tottenham system.
Yeah.
And that was a great advert for the academy, and that was down to Chris Ramsey, John McDermott, and their philosophies filtering down. And it was all about, which was quite new at the time. It was very new at the time. It was all about 1v1s, and it was all about technique. So a lot of isolated trainings.
Yeah.
And we had this thing as well where we used to say at the end of the session, we want each boy to have 2,000 touches of the ball at least. It was we had Ricardo Moniz, who was there in the first few months I was there, who's one of the best developers of young players I've ever seen in my life, a Dutch guy. He's worked with some of the world's best.
Wow.
And it was all about, it was all about technique, 1v1s, 2v1s, and constantly sort of doing things where you're checking your shoulders. And it was quite new at the time. And it was something that I really enjoyed. It was all about expression. It was all about, skills, committing players. It was developing players to be comfortable with the ball.
Yeah.
The best thing about Spurs at the time for me was you never got asked what the score was,
Right.
After a game. So
Okay.
Chris Ramsey wouldn't have it. He did not, and you know what? He didn't care. He did not care, and it was great because you saw that, I think, with the coaches, because they could relax. They're not preparing for Arsenal tomorrow. It's just another game. So you're keeping your same ideology, if you like, your same vision. You're not changing what you're doing because you've got Arsenal tomorrow at under 9 level. The players played with freedom, and it was just a great environment to work in. Yeah.
Do you think that was the start of how? Sorry to interrupt you there. Do you think that was the start of how the FA are really coaching coaches to be nowadays? Because a lot of things you spoke about there, it really seems like when you talk about the England DNA and the way that they're really pushing all of the, I want to say grassroots coaches, because of course in academy football they will have their certain styles and there's trusted people in charge. But the way that you're asking players to take as many touches as possible, to get at players rather than move the ball, pass the ball. You're actually asking, it sounds like you're asking players to actually keep the ball, learn to protect the ball and love having it. Is that right?
Yeah, correct. I mean, look, this is just my opinion. You can, if you build a young player up to, like you say, we take 2,000, 3,000 touches a session of a ball. Now you calculate that by 3 trainings a week, then a month, and then a year. How many touches of the ball has that boy had? So you can imagine how much more comfortable of the ball he is than maybe someone who's just been taught to pass it and give it. We're talking at the very youngest age groups here.
Yeah.
So you can as they develop into 11-a-side football, the players will then grow into their positions and find their own positions. And if they've got that technical ability of being comfortable with the ball, they can then it doesn't take long to then teach them how to quickly receive it and pass it, or
the more technical side of the game.
Exactly. And we used to, I think the thing that I learned a lot from that period was we never told the boys to pass the ball. Okay, from sort of under 9s, under 10s, never mention the word pass. But the the better boys would work it out for themselves. So they would realise that they got 3 defenders in front of them, and they would move the ball.
Mm-hmm.
So you would actually see, like Oliver Skipp, for example. He's a centre midfielder at Tottenham now, who played in the first team, and he worked out pretty quickly that if he thought there's a good chance of him losing the ball because there's 3 players ahead of him, he would move the ball quickly.
Mm-hmm.
So and we put on practices without telling them to pass. We put on practices where they're actually working it out. I need to pass here.
Yeah, that's going to be a lot easier if I do that. There's more chance that as a team we're going to experience the success, if you want to call it success. We're going to reach our target or reach our goal by doing it, rather than you pass the ball there and you pass the ball there, and that's the pattern. Rather than doing patterns, so you've then created a player that is so comfortable on the ball. They're confident in 1v1 situations. If the opportunity is there that they can take on a centre half and get a shot away, they will. But also, a bit later on, and like you said, some of them a little bit earlier perhaps, will start to then realise actually it's going to really be a lot easier for the team and help the team if I do pass it there. So it's a natural thing. But you must have created that environment as a club and as a coach. Who was it, or how high did it come from, that decision to provide that environment for players to keep the ball and to be trusted on the ball?
Well, it come from the very top. It come from John McDermott, and it come from Chris Ramsey.
Yeah.
They knew each other before they both come to Tottenham, and they had a clear philosophy of what they wanted to do, and it got communicated down by Chris Ramsey, and he was most training sessions. He used to get involved, and what a fantastic guy! And he's a head of coaching now at QPR, and he's doing the same fantastic work there. You as a coach, or us as coaches, that age group, you've got to put on practices where the boys will work it out for themselves. So you put on a 3v2, for example, then without telling them, they're going to try to find that free man, aren't they?
Mm-hmm.
And you put on practices and you create the environment where the players work it out whether it's ideal to dribble or whether it's ideal to pass.
It's that decision making. You're then developing decision making by allowing them to make decisions. It just makes sense, really. It's nice to hear from somebody that was involved at the time. Of course, being a coach myself, I've heard bits and I've read information, but to hear from somebody that was involved, sort of the license you were given to do that is excellent. It's a credit to, like you say, people from the top right down to you guys that must have done a good job over that time to produce the players you did. So thanks for sharing that with us. I'm going to move on to the next stage, which seems an incredible jump and a brave jump, really, from being in the comfort of the UK and London particularly, to go out actually to Azerbaijan, to their Premier League with Gabala FC. So I've got so many questions about it, but I think it's only right to ask you first of all, how did it come about? And how did that come about? Well,
yeah, I mean, I got a phone call from Gary Stevens, and he said to me, Daryl, I've got I'm assistant manager at a team in Europe. Mm-hmm. The manager, that's all he said, was the manager is looking for a young development coach to work with the 16s to 19s. Yep. Would you be interested? And I said yes. And a couple of days later, I received a phone call from Tony Adams. Wow. Exactly. Wow. It was totally out of the blue. I'd never met him. He asked me to meet him in London, in the centre of London. So I went there and I spent a bit of time with him. We chatted and I got the job. And then he said to me, he phoned me a couple of days later and he said, Daryl, it's all on hold. And that was about it. And I thought, okay, well, that's sort of gone. Yeah. And I think out of the blue, a couple of days later, I got a phone call on the Friday after they spent a couple of days out there. And they realised the people that were in place already were just not going to work. Mm-hmm. And I got a phone call on the Friday. And then I was out there on the Monday.
Wow. As quick as that.
Yeah.
Wow, that's incredible. So your role there, I've got here, was predominantly reserve team manager,
Yeah,
and I assume Tony Adams was first team manager.
correct. Yeah,
Yeah,
um,
brilliant.
yeah,
Yeah, so I'm going to talk first of all, before we get into the football side of it. You've just moved now from somewhere that is not just your football home, but really home for your entire life by the look of it,
yeah.
to now to living in Azerbaijan, which must be so different. So I want to talk about the local area and the culture there. How much of a culture, I might as well say, how much of a culture shock was it to go out there?
Yeah. Yeah, this is at a time when I guarantee not many people at all had ever heard of the country.
Yeah.
Okay, it was obviously a very new sort of country from the Soviet Union. Now, Gabala was in the northwest of Azerbaijan, in the mountains. So we flew out there, landed in Baku, and we had a 4-hour journey on through the mountains to a point where I would say for about 100 kilometers the road was not a road, if we like. It was just
Really?
like a dirt track through the mountains. And we arrived in Gabala, and there's basically in the mountain, it's a very difficult area, shall we say. There's not much there. There's no sort of restaurants. There's no pubs. There's no real social. There's no social scene at all. There's no expats. It's very much where basically everybody ended up being either a taxi driver, a security guard, and it was and basically it was a very developing area, shall we say. And it was a huge shock to me, personally, being 27 years old, I think I was, something like that. And it was it was tough. It was I say this on a lot of podcasts with people who ask me, and I would say the first 3 months, and you either sink or swim, and then first 3 months it takes you to either call it home or get on an aeroplane and go home.
And get home.
Yeah, the first 3 months were incredibly tough because the first team were the first team and they were looked after. And I wouldn't say that the same about the reserve team. We were sort of like the misfits at the time. It was full of middle sort of 26, 27-year-olds. We're talking the reserve team. And it was, we were fighting after kit, footballs and stuff like this, even places to train because the training ground was developing. And it was a real culture shock, a great and unbelievable learning experience. I didn't have a translator where the first team did. So it was, like I said, it was an incredibly tough first 3 months for me. It's religion as well. I had to quickly learn about that, what I can do, can't do, and etc. Like, even something so innocent like you go into a shop and there's a female person behind the cash, the cashier. If you even say like hello and stuff like that, it was just, you just don't do it because you're not really allowed. So it was just simple things like that you've really got to get a move on and learn what you can and can't do and how to behave. And in my first, we done sort of 6 weeks of pre-season, and then everyone went on Ramadan. So we had our first game of the season, and I would say 75% of the boys hadn't eaten anything for about 14 hours or drunk anything. It was 6-7 o'clock kickoff in the evening because it was so hot. It was like 40 degrees. So again, it was how to manage that situation, and it's something that has been just incredibly vital to me on a personal note, and something that I have done and will take with me wherever I go in the future.
Cool.
So yeah.
That's absolutely incredible to hear that to move from the conditions you would have lived in to going out to there, and not just the footballing conditions, but you've mentioned briefly living conditions as well, and not having a lot to do or any social sort of side of living out there. It's not quite like moving to Spain and you almost might as well be in England nowadays. They're so accommodating. So to move to the area you did, not even in Baku, not in the capital, and to move out to there. Was you aware of what you were sort of arriving to is one thing. And how did the facilities change from when you arrived, and what did they develop into?
Yeah, I mean, just start with I did not have a clue what I was going into. I think even if somebody told me, you just can't understand until you're in that situation.
Yeah.
And it's tough, and it's tough on your mental health. It's when what people don't understand is when they work in these kinds of environments at that time. I mean, the country's moved on just incredible amounts in the last 10 years. But I mean, things like the internet, I mean, it was horrendous, to a point where if it rained or snowed, there was no internet. So and it,
wow.
and like I said, for your mental health, it's tough. You're sort of bouncing off the walls. So we had to find lots of different things to do. But what a stunning area, what a stunning place. The training ground, when I got there, they said they were going to develop a training ground and build a stadium, and you're like, yeah, whatever. And then you get there, you're training on a cow field, and then within, I would say, a couple of months, there's a brand new Astro. Within a few months, there's another one. Then there's an indoor centre, and then there's basically by about 13, 14 months, there's about 7 grass pitches, and I mean Cat 1 Academy standard pitches. They were they were incredible, and it happened in about 14 months. They had an English guy out there doing all the pitches, and just what the environment. And that's when when the pitches, when you turn up to training, it doesn't matter what you're going through, what's going on in your life. When you get on that pitch, on a beautiful pitch like that, with good players, with nice players who we built over the first year, we built such a great rapport, great friendship, and it was just a fantastic environment, like I said. And within a year, I'd learnt the language, which was important to me, and gain the respect as well. Like I said, all your worries go away as soon as you step on that pitch.
Of course. I'm going to talk about what I'd be crazy not to talk about, really. The fact that Tony Adams was involved at the club. Now we don't need to go into his playing career because we know so much about that already. But himself as a person and as a coach, how much could you take away from somebody like that while she was out there?
Yeah, the one thing about Tony is he just, the experience, the knowledge, the stories. I learned so much by having dinner with him because of the amount that what he talked about. How Arsene Wenger prolonged his career 4 or 5 years. Well, how did he do that? And it was just the different methods of sort of Arsene Wenger and George Graham. Were chalk and cheese, but they were ultimately both incredibly successful.
Absolutely.
And the periodization, that's when I first heard of the word periodization back in sort of 2007, and I was like, 2010, and I was like, okay, I like this. What is it? And I started to do a lot of homework about that side of it, and that's really developed me as a coach. And I think when he was speaking about Bergkamp in training and Patrick Vieira, it was just,
Wow.
you learn so much. And then he got on the pitch and he worked on, I think they went, it was like the 87th in the world record ever in the whole of world football of the most clean sheets in a row. I think they'd like 14, 15 clean sheets in a row in the Premier League.
Wow.
And that was down to him doing his George Graham back four work, basically. And it was very successful. We didn't score much, but they didn't concede. So I think most of them were draws. But it was fantastic. And he's someone that I still speak to weekly. And he's a very, like I said about Jose, this people develop their own opinions off social media. But the guy is a very caring, loving guy. And he's a hell of a football person as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm going to move on from that now. Move on from Gabala. That was it sounds like you experienced so much within the 2 years there for you to take with you. How was the decision to stay in the country, move to Baku, which is, you said, 3 or 4 hours away, to the capital city? So your role there was academy director and reserve team head coach. Is that right?
Yeah, that's correct. Well, what happened was my contract finished, and Tony had been sacked sort of left his head coach's role. He went upstairs basically, but he left his role about 14 months into the job. So I was there sort of on my own. Gary had gone as well, Gary Stevens, and I finished off my season. And we just in that time at Gabala we broke the record in the first year for the most points, highest ever finish, most goals scored and least conceded. And then that's in the club's history. And then we done it again the next year. So it's a real successful time for me personally, especially when Tony and Gary went. I was literally sort of on my own. And that was okay to a point, because it was more like home. Then I spent a lot of time. Bit and I found places to sort of unwind, But my contract finished, and I went home for a few months. I went home for 6 months, actually. And during that time, I was sort of assessing what's next, really. I'd just got married as well at the time. And my wife is from there, which I will state. And she was out there. So I was doing my best to get out there. But in that little time, I got a phone call from Emma Hayes, who's the Chelsea ladies manager. Right. And she was just about to go in at Chelsea, and she asked me to go with her. So I went in with her for 6 months, just to get that off the ground, because Chelsea just avoided relegation the year before, and she had massive plans. So I was with Emma, incredible coach, by the way. Yeah, absolute full of knowledge. She's one of the best coaches I've ever worked with in my life. Wow. And anyway, I got a phone call and to come to Baku and to speak to a club called Azal. So I flew out there in sort of late January, and I signed my contract, and I stayed out there as academy manager for Azal PFK, who finished third or fourth in the league the year before. So they were playing the Europa League qualifiers. And it was a fantastic club. I really, really enjoyed my time there. The issues that I had in Gabala, in terms of sort of should we say mentality, that stood me in great standing really for this challenge, really, because I was in Baku, where the mentality is different, and it was very much results, as every club was in the country, results orientated, from under nines all the way through. So I was
Really?
academy manager of an academy which was only an academy in name. You know, they didn't invest, they didn't care, the management didn't care. And I basically, because I'm English and because I'm foreign and because I'm paid more than the locals, from day one I was expected to get results with players that were not very good, with hardly any footballs, with nowhere to train. So these are all the things that I had to do rapidly, and I did. And the first thing I'd done, because I made a few connections within the FA, was get a lot of young, eager coaches who had just done their level 2s and level 3s, who were untouched, shall we say, by the old mentality. Yeah. So, and they were keen. They were like mid-20s, and they wanted to learn off the English coach, and it was great. And you know, we had like a team of us, about 5 or 6 coaches. You know, there's many obstacles when you go abroad that you've got to be aware of and work out how best to manage a situation. So, for example, maybe for example, the under-19 coach is a relative of the vice president. So actually he's not a coach. He can't coach, and he doesn't want to coach, and so how and he doesn't want to listen, and he doesn't want to listen to me. So because he's untouchable, or he thought he was untouchable, and then sort of you've got to work out ways of either getting him on board or getting him out. And these are all the things, the obstacles that people face when they can go abroad. But it was great. I set up the first community system, coaching in the schools. I set up the first one in the country. So I got coaches out going to schools doing scouting. And suddenly, amazingly, we found some really decent under-9s and under-10s. And within the first few months of the season, we're suddenly beating the Karabaks and the bigger clubs and FGs. Not regularly. We're still getting tonked now and again, but that's what we are. We were a small club with no money, and that's what it is. So I had to balance, same as Gabali, you've got to balance winning and development, because you've got to win.
Their mentality.
You've got to win to keep your job, even at under-9 level. You've got to win, but actually you want to develop. And we done a fantastic job. I really enjoyed my time there in some incredible, difficult circumstances. You know, with people behind you just not wanting you there. But you know, like I said, I surrounded myself with good people straight away, and that was key. And that was key to surviving. And then I got a call. From the German technical director of the FA, and to come on board as sporting director
of the Azerbaijan FA. That was what I was going to get onto. What an unbelievable role, to be honest, at any age, let alone the age you must have been at the time. So what are the challenges then? So you've moved on from Azel, is that correct? Do you leave that role?
Well, yeah, I'll explain. It's a funny role, because basically the FA had got the money to develop, basically put in a development plan. So Bernhard Lippert, the German technical director, was given a pot of money to go and develop young players for the national team. So how does he do that? So he's got to bring in foreign coaches. That was number one. So actually, the idea was to bring in 10 sporting directors, but that didn't happen. I think 5 were appointed, including me. They were all, I wasn't. I was an A licensed coach at the time. I was about 30, 31. And they appointed some incredible people. I mean, it was people that had worked in some of the top clubs in Europe and in the world as well. And there was 2 Dutch and 3 three German, and myself. That's six. And
Real
our
mix of cultures in there.
Yeah, and it was funny as well because the Germans and the Dutch they just never see eye to eye anyway to do football.
Yeah,
You know, so there's always that, and I'm sort of in the middle with Bernard. Obviously, he's German, but we're just sitting there sort of nudging each other all the time but it was great. Every Friday we used to meet, and basically what the role was to have a club each. Okay, so not really any of the clubs in the country gave a damn about youth. Okay, so the FA went, right, well, you're not gonna bother about youth, so we're gonna take over your youth academy, and there's nothing you can do about it. Okay.
Wow. Was that for the entire league, the entire Azerbaijan Premier League?
Well, in the end, because only 6 sporting directors were appointed, it was only 6 clubs.
Okay, yeah.
Okay. So basically we all got given a club each, and I got given back Azal. But this time I was in a strong position because I wasn't employed by the club. I was employed by the FA. Yeah. So people couldn't get in my way at all. And also, I also had a pot of money as well. So if I wanted 50 footballs, I got 50 footballs. If I wanted, like one of the proudest moments, I got to be honest, was we kitted out the whole academy. I mean, the full works, big jackets, the tracksuits a lot, and you see these under 9s with these kits, and it's just beautiful because
I'm so proud.
And they're not, they come from very, very, very difficult, poor backgrounds. A lot of them, to get this new kit was just like, their smiles was unbelievable. And basically we met once a week, all of us, and it was a case of working together with the national teams and scouting. We'd done a lot of scouting together, so we would go out into different parts of the country that had never been sort of scouted before, and as the FA, and then see if we can sort of like take some boys back with us, if you like, to our clubs.
Find them.
Yeah, and it was great, and listen, learning off these coaches. I mean, Stanley Brard, he went into Gabala when I left as academy manager. Stanley Brard is Dutch, and this guy is a fantastic developer of young players. So he was the Feyenoord academy director, and then he went to Gabala, and now he's back as the Feyenoord academy director. And he was employed by Gabala, but he sat in most of our weekly meetings. And he's just fantastic. The knowledge, the development side and like I said, there were so many contrasting views on how to develop players, and it was great because Stanley Brad's like, no, 11v11s are under 9s. He's just saying, well, that's the game. You bring in you make the pitch smaller to the physical level of the players. And the German and sort of myself are going, no, it's 6v6s, 7v7s, 8v8s, 9v9s.
Yeah.
But to listen to Stanley and for him to give his reasons why 11v11, because under 9s, it made sense as well.
Yeah, of course. So you had a real range of you.
Yeah, and it was fantastic. And but ultimately, we went back to our clubs and we've done what we thought was best. But during that time, we had some huge successes with the youth national teams. Most years they qualified for the elite rounds. The under 21s were finally competitive.
So you worked right up until the top age groups of that then.
Well, yeah, I mean, over time, obviously they filtered through, and even when I got there, the national coach was Bertie Vokes, and then it was Robert Prozinecki. But Bertie Vokes in that time when we were there, beat Norway in a qualifier in Norway.
And for them, that's a huge achievement.
Yeah, and beat Turkey as well in a qualifier. So we were definitely on the right path. We were producing players I believe technically and better and more intelligent. And for me, it was about coaching. Coach education was paramount. And to get out the old style of coaching, the old Soviet style of coaching, which was running basically and physical.
Well, that was actually going to be my next question about how important, because of obviously the facilities out there and the fact it was still very, very much in early stages and developing into what it would be now, or maybe even so much so by the time you left there. Was you able to, so how important was the coach education, and was you able to really start to implement your own ideas when you was in the role with the FA out there?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we worked incredibly close with the coach education side. We all dipped in as well as sporting directors. We all dipped in to sort of get involved on courses, help the young coaches. There were some coaches, there were some coaches that, you know, level 2 and they're 45 and they were like, well, you know, I know it all. But that's, you get that all around the world in wherever you go. But now and again, you found a real decent young player, or you know, a player maybe 30, 31 who's thinking about going into coaching, but who's got a good mentality, good character. And then you start identifying coaches, and it was vital for us. It was vital to get people to understand that the way it's been done in the past is not correct, and it's not all about shouting and, you know, fighting the referees, and you know, it's about development at the younger age groups. And you know, it was a great time, but the coach education is just paramount.
That's brilliant to hear about your time out there. Thanks for sharing that with us. Your story, really, I want to say your Azerbaijan story, because it was quite a lengthy one overall. And to go from what you first experienced in Gabala and the challenges there, to get over really the mental side of struggling out there, to learn a new language, to moving into the capital. Again, on a personal note, finding your wife to be out there. And to move on to working with the FA, that's a really incredible experience. So thanks ever so much for sharing that with us. I've definitely taken a lot from it myself, and I know listeners will be really pleased to listen to all of that. How much would you advise? I think I'm going to know the answer to this one, to be honest, but is it something you would advise, I was going to say young coach, but any coach to do, to go out and experience, not necessarily just Azerbaijan, but go and experience football abroad and in another country? Do you think that's key to a coach's development?
Yeah, I do. I think, and I don't want anyone to think I'm being critical. These are all just my opinions, but I think we coaches, you know, in the past, and I say now as well, I think the younger coaches now are in danger of being too inwards. They're all doing their sort of level 2s and level 3s at early ages, and they fall straight into an education system of the English FA, which is fantastic, by the way. It's doing a great job. But I feel a lot of them, especially when you look on social media, are in danger of speaking too much of a good game without actually doing too many years on the grass. And I think you need to get out there. You need to experience the real world of what it actually is of footballers around the world, because football's not all about the Premier League and the big four nations, etc. There's a big world of football out there, and there's a lot of people, you know, really playing football to feed their family, and you know, learning a new language, learning how to communicate when you can't speak the same language of 99% of your players. And the cultural side, and you know, it's just an incredible experience. And I just I said it a couple of times before, and like I said, it's not a criticism. It's just for me personally, and you might have this in one of your questions later about advice or something like that, but just be your own coach, and you know, you get your driving license, you know, and you know, you got to put your own stamp on it, you know, and so you know, I heard that when I was 17. You get your driving license and you coach, you know, or you get your coaching license, you know, you coach how you want. But I think we're in danger. Young coaches are in danger of being too closed-minded, really.
Absolutely.
I see, just to go off on a tangent, really, just
You're
while, hopefully people can take it on board, and maybe they'll be giving me a bit of stick. I don't know, but I see a lot of people, especially young coaches, they put on Twitter, and it's basically my way or the highway. And they're criticising people. They're criticising Dennis Wise the other day because he started shouting at some young players I think it was in India, wasn't it? I was going around social media the other week, and he was getting so much abuse of young coaches without people really understanding. And I don't either, because I wasn't out there and I don't understand, the context of it. But maybe instead of going, that's wrong, just understand a bit why he's maybe doing that. Because it was for me, whether it was right or wrong the way he was saying it. I don't want to give an opinion on that. It was more the fact that it was a psychological element that he was working on, to actually say to the players to toughen up. And I'm telling you now, for a young player, a young coach, or a young person trying to be a banker or trying to get to the top of their business career somewhere else, you've got to be tough in this world. You've got to toughen up, and there's no wrong. People have got to be more open-minded as coaches. There's a big debate on the isolated versus, non-isolated training. I read on Twitter today, and there's all the people that do the isolated training, and they're saying, this has to be done, and then you got the other people going, you shouldn't do any of it. Well, I think both of them are wrong in terms of they're both so inward thinking in terms of my way is the highway.
Their approach to it, really.
Yeah, and I think people have got to open their mind up where there's a place for both. And people say there's no place for isolated training. Well, tell that to Cristiano Ronaldo. He used to get a sack of balls every day after training, 100 balls, and whack a free kick in the net. So there's a place for everything. So sorry, I just went off on a tangent there.
No, you're absolutely fine. It's great to hear it, because I 100% agree, and I know exactly where you're coming from. And I actually think, bearing in mind I don't follow Twitter accounts of many European coaches and things, so I don't have the experience of being able to say whether it is just us. But I do think as a nation we don't learn many languages very often. I don't think enough people learn languages, and I think that so this is me giving my opinion, I think that reflects into the way our coaches also are. This is how I am as a coach. If you believe it, you can follow me, and if you don't believe it, then you're not right, and I'm going to argue with everything you say. And I do think we do tend to be. When I say we, I don't mean me and you. I mean as a nation. I do think our nation of coaches. And I also think, building on another point you've said, again, I think the FA courses are fantastic. I think that is advice I would give to a young coach, to go and get out there and do them, definitely. But I do also agree with the fact, and I hold the opinion of the fact that we have also got to implement and grow our own style as a coach, because otherwise we are potentially in danger of us all being exactly the same, and us all having these same beliefs and sharing the same, if you want to call them, drills or practices. So I couldn't agree more with that, and it's nice to hear from somebody that has seen it and at your level totally agrees, basically.
I think on that, just quickly, I think you're right about the languages and sort of getting out there. It has changed a lot in the last 10 years. 10 years ago, there was very few coaches abroad. Now there's lots. So I think we are branching out. But what I would say as well, I think every country's the same. Germans only go German. They will say their way is the best way. Spanish are terrible for it, by the way. I mean, wherever I've gone in the world, the Spanish will say this is what you have to do at under 9 level. There's nothing outside the box. So I think every nation is the same, to be honest.
So we can all perhaps try and learn. And I'll be honest, that is the reason I'm doing what I'm doing with this podcast, to hopefully allow more people to access different opinions and different ideas and methodology, etc. So I can almost guarantee your opinion might clash with the next person, that'll clash with the next. But that's what's great about being a coach to me,
Yeah.
and about being able to listen and learn. But I'm going to move on to try and delve a little bit deeper into yourself as a coach, firstly, and different beliefs you have. But firstly, the pro license course. So you've now done your pro license, and I'd love to hear, because it's not a course that everybody has very quick access to, or should have quick access to either. So how is the course? What is your experience of the course, and just talk to me through your journey through it, basically.
Yeah. Well, I was sporting director for the FA and for Azerbaijan, and to basically the job title was you had to be a pro license coach. So the German FA, because the Azerbaijan German FA had a link, so they started putting on the pro license courses. So I jumped on it. So
Cool.
it was quite funny, really, because I had a translator, because it was taught in German. Then it was translated into Azeri, and then I got the English translation.
Oh, blimey.
I got the English translation badly.
Yeah,
So it was like Chinese whispers, you know.
Yeah,
So it was quite funny, but ultimately I think it was, if I remember right, you were assessed on 4 different areas, and it was 2 practicals and 2 other areas. I really can't remember now, but a lot of the course was based on the management side. We went to Switzerland and done a lot on the sort of media side. So how would you cope in front of 20 reporters throwing questions at you? You know, you got to sit in front of an audience and basically bounce back sort of make-believe questions. How would you cope under pressure? And the psychological side and the treatment of how your sort of interpersonal skills with the players themselves. And then we had because the coaching level in Azerbaijan wasn't too high compared to other nations, they'd done 2 practical sessions on the grass, which is not really heard of in especially the more established nations, football nations. So it was mainly focused on for me about the management side, but they did put a heavy side on the coaching side, which they don't do in many FAs.
No, okay. I think that sounds like the major difference then when you get onto the pro license. You've started to move away from developing your game and developing your own philosophy and style of play and the coaching. And whilst keeping on the coaching as well, you're then adding in actually attributes, not just necessarily skills, but attributes, and testing your attributes as a manager as well. So how, like you say, how you can deal with the psychological side of it and communication skills. And when you get onto the pro license course, there must be so many international managers and Premier League managers. And is it a course that you have to, am I right that you have to be invited onto the course?
I think you'll find it's totally depends on the FA. Yeah. So obviously the English, German, French, Spanish, etc. That would probably be invitational only, or you apply and then you probably get in or you don't. But I think the smaller nations, there's so fewer coaches that it's a bit different. It's a bit different, yeah.
Okay, that's really, really interesting. I'm going to move on to you as a coach and your own beliefs. So it's going to be a little bit of a broad question, and I'm fine for you to answer it in the best way you wish. But if I was to come and watch a Daryl Willard team, you're the first team manager, and they're playing a style of play you want to play, what am I going to experience? So how does the team look? How do you like your team to play?
Well, I think as one thing that I've tried to stick to my values. I think being a manager or coach is about the players and it's about the people, and it's about being honest, and it's about being truthful, and it's about having good relationships with people. So I think, first of all, anyone who comes to watch my teams or will notice the players. How can I put this?
Behaviour.
There's a family feel to us wherever I've gone in the last sort of decade, and I think that's vital, and I think that's vital for development. I think that's vital for points on the pitch. I think if you can get to a stage where players literally, and it's an old school saying, but run through brick walls for you, then you're able to keep your job for a couple of months, maybe extra.
Definitely.
And I think it's vital. But I do think that me as a coach, I think anyone who comes to watch my teams will. Someone said it a few months back. They always know a Daryl Willard team by the way we play football.
Compliment. That's definitely a compliment.
Yeah, exactly. And that comes from various different aspects throughout my life, as in from my experiences. So from Tottenham, I love the 1v1s. And committing players and scoring goals. But I love I love intelligent footballers, really. I love players that are not scared to do something on the ball in difficult situations. And I want players to express themselves. That's vital for me. I'm not a fan, for me personally, I'm not a fan of taking away expression and being sort of how can I say this, a more structured team. I like players to interchange, and for me, I think the players enjoy that wherever I've gone. But like I said, I think it comes from being honest, being truthful, being a good person, getting players on your side, and then they buy into you. And that's sort of like the battle. I feel like in the world of, I've been around the world and I've seen different coaches coach. And you might think, oh, I don't think of him much of a coach. But actually, he gets points because the players love him. So what I'm probably trying to say is that side of the game, the how you are with players and how you talk to players. And I go back to being honest and truthful, because players, whatever age, whether it's under nines or first team, players will work out a coach that isn't honest. Whether they don't like it or not, at least they will say, well, he's honest, and you get their respect. And I think that's a massive battle for you as a coach or a manager, is to get that, because the players will then buy into anything else you ask them to do, however different it's been for them, in the past.
Definitely. No, thanks for sharing that. I think definitely it sounds like a team I'd love to play in to start with. And I think you're finding that balance between making sure you're remaining the person you want to be first and foremost, not just for footballing reasons, but for your own reasons. And then the fact that will also help you create this unit on the pitch that'll buy into your beliefs in the way you coach, and quite clearly with the experience you've had, you're definitely doing something right as a coach. And then also to add who you are as a person, I think must be quite clear for you to be getting the roles that you continue to get, and the opportunities. And I think that's really, I'm excited to see where you go next for that. I'll move on next to, obviously I did make a note on here that you did your pro license by 33 years old, which is incredible on that course. I'll put on here, how important do you think it is, the backroom team you have at a club? So you've been in a position where you must have had to recruit a backroom team and people to support you as the top role in the job you're doing. And you've also been a part of a backroom team as well. So how important do you think it is that you build the right backroom team, and what is it you would look for?
Yeah, the same values, really. I look for someone who's truthful and honest. I think whatever environment, actually, I would say senior level mainly. But in senior level, whether it's in the UK or wherever, all around the world, you've got to surround yourself with good people. And it's vital, because it's probably, in a lot of countries, it's the only way to keep your job. You need people around you that you can trust, and who are going to carry your message when you're not around. So it's vital. It's vital that even the physio spends more time with the players than anyone. Especially if someone's injured for a few weeks. He's spending so much time with him, and it's can you trust the physio to get you back if the player's digging you out? So you've all got to be on the same page, and it's very tough as well to do that, because a lot of jobs, if you're getting senior football around the world, they part of the job spec might be that you've got to employ one of their coaches as your assistant. And you've got to realise if that happens, it's a bit of potluck. What kind of character you're going to get? Are you going to get a spy for the management, or are you going to get someone who's actually pretty decent and who wants to work with you? So it's difficult, but you've got to surround yourself. I mean, I've done it at Gabala. At Christmas time, I was there for 6 months, and I managed to get this guy in from Baku. So he came to Gabala. He spoke broken English, but he was such a great guy. And there were times when I might have, maybe there was times when he didn't believe what I was saying. Maybe I was being a bit harsh on a player or something like this. I don't know. I'm just saying stuff, but whatever, he would have my back and he would, go along with me. And maybe behind my back, he might be going, yeah, Daryl's only got your best interests at heart. And, so he was being a fantastic number two, basically, because his job is to obviously keep both sides of the, keep both sides happy. So it's very important. It's vital.
Yeah, definitely. And on a personal note on that one, I'm not going to mention the club on here, but I've experienced both sides of that as well myself. I'm now in my 10th year managing and coaching sides, and I've been in a position where I've had to remain. The assistants had to remain at the club, and it hasn't worked out. And in hindsight, to be honest, I shouldn't have accepted the role from day one. With that in place, there should have been, and I learned a lot. I learned a lot from that. I learned that I really needed to spend more time with that person and understand their beliefs in football, and just make sure that we are, as well as human qualities as a coach, are we sort of on the same page at the very least. So I can really understand that, and it's nice to hear that all the way through the game. That's really, really relevant, and how important it is. I couldn't agree more. I'll allow you to keep this one shorter, because there's so much advice. I think all through this you've been some of it willingly and some of it without knowing, giving advice to young coaches along the way. But if there was a key bit of advice to a young coach now, or any coach really, but particularly a young coach in the game, what would your advice be to them if you just had 2 minutes?
Open your minds up, be your own coach, and get on the grass. Stop. Not stop, that's the wrong word, but don't be a coach that makes out he's won the World Cup on Twitter. Get on the pitch as much as you can, whether that's under 6s at grassroots, whether that's under 18s in a professional team. Get on the grass as much as you can and learn. That's it in a nutshell.
Yeah, 100%. And you do see a lot that probably do more tweeting than they do coaching. And I'm not going to name any names, but but you definitely do. So yeah, that's fantastic advice. And before I leave you, it's been a long and unbelievably interesting conversation. But I'm really interested to know what's next for you. I'm going to be looking out for sure. What is it you're looking to do next? Is there anything in the pipeline? What are you thinking next?
Yeah, it's been a funny year, really. I was off to Eastern Europe in sort of September, October. I was waiting for a contract, and then for political reasons inside the club, it didn't happen. Then I got through to sort of January, and I had a couple more offers. I had an offer again from Eastern Europe, from another Eastern European Premier League team. in February, and then the virus kicked off while I was waiting for my contract. So again, either that's on hold or that, you know, nobody knows what's going to happen after that. So in a nutshell, I'm talking to people, I'm talking to clubs, and I'm looking for an opportunity, whether that's in the UK or abroad again. I feel I've got a lot to offer. But you know, I'm just looking, and any project, whether that's a long-term project or a manager, head coach position somewhere, then I'm definitely, you know, wanting to sort of talk and get back out there and get back on the grass and continue my learning and development.
Excellent. And I honestly can't wait to see what's next for you. I certainly know I'm going to keep in contact with yourself and make sure that we keep each other up to date, and I know where you're off to next. Thanks ever so much for sharing all of your journey with us. I know so many people will take different bits, and I hope everyone listening, whether they take massive amounts from it or they take little snippets here and there, I know everybody listening, no matter where they've been, can take something. Yeah, and thanks ever so much for giving us nearly an hour and a half now of your time.
Wow. Yeah, I mean, yeah, last thing, you know, Jose Mourinho said when he first came to Chelsea, to be a good coach, you've got to be a 70% good thief and 30% personality. And that's what it's about, is listening and watching and taking what you like and then adding your own spin on it as a coach.
Mm-hmm. Wow, one message to leave us with. Thanks ever so much, Daryl.
James, it's been a pleasure.
Thanks. Thank you.